Hello, this is a short video on the future of World of Tanks on the Xbox. I made a video about a year ago, 10 months ago, when I looked at the data and talked about the likely future of World of Tanks on Xbox. And I'm just revisiting it really with some new data. Most of you probably won't have seen that. I didn't really publicize it very much, but it's still on my YouTube site if you want to look at it. So if you want to know who I am, if you don't know who I am, if you want to know what the video is about, why does any of this matter, again, go to the original YouTube video, watch that. There's some useful stuff. And again, it's interesting to look back at what I was saying then and compare it with what's happening now. So what's new from last year? Okay, well, the data is saying very much the same kind of thing. It's just a little bit less ambiguously, and now I'm prepared to actually sort of get off the fence and make a prediction about the future of the game, and that prediction is that the Xbox version of World of Tanks is dead. I'm finally prepared to, like I say, get off the fence and call it. Really, I think the game is dead now. Now, by that, I don't literally mean dead, pushing up daisies. I mean, obviously, you log into the game, you play it, you know it's still working. What I really mean is this, really, that the game has fallen off a cliff. It's now entered into a descent from which I can't really see any way of it recovering. Now, so more specifically, what I mean is recruitment, which was already falling, is continuing to fall, accelerating if anything. The active player base is falling at an unprecedented rate. This was a criticism of the previous video I made, that I looked at, I didn't look directly at the player base, and I'm doing that now, and that's fallen at an unprecedented rate, and I believe it's not going to be very long before it's impossible to ignore this. And I think the debate is very soon going to shift from whether the game is in trouble to how long it has left. I mean, I'm remaking this video now because I'm aware there's been quite a lot of discussion on the forum about this issue, and I thought you could probably all benefit from some facts and figures. And that's the end. Well, it's not really the end. I just figure that a lot of you probably already made your minds up, so I might as well let you get off and make a cup of tea or something. For those of you who are more interested in sticking around, I'll explain why I've come to this conclusion. So first of all, last time I put some figures on the forum, I got a range of responses. An awful lot of them were people just saying, nah, there's nothing wrong with the game, it's fine, all games die, I've heard it all before, plenty of times left. And I characterised the responses on this scale, really. On the one extreme, we had people who didn't engage with the discussion at all. They just said the game's fine, forget about it. On the other hand, we had people who didn't wait to see the figures. They just, wargaming are crap, they destroyed the game, blah blah. Now, I would characterise these two positions as, on the one hand, denial, I'd say, was the one extreme, and on the other hand was sort of bitterness. And I would argue that anyone with any degree of intellectual integrity would really live somewhere in the middle of this scale, where they'd have their own ideas about what they thought was happening and what they wanted to happen, but they'd be receptive to data and arguments, certainly. And just because you don't want the game to end is no reason not to engage with the discussion. One of my favourite posts on here was by Rarefication, in which he didn't particularly want the game to fail, but he was quite circumspect. He said, look, there's not much I can do about it. I love the game. I want to keep playing it. If this happens, it happens. Which, for those of you who are familiar with transactional analysis, would be what you would characterize as an adult response to a difficult situation. So obviously, on the forums, you're faced with a lot of different, the internet generally, you're faced with a lot of different sources of information. How do you know who to believe? Well, I'd argue there's a very simple way to test someone's credibility, which is if they don't engage in the process of discussion, if they don't provide you anything testable, no facts, no line of reasoning, nothing you can really discuss with, then they're not really entering a debate at all. They're just simply telling you what they believe to be the case. And if they have no evidence to back it up, then it's simply that, it's a belief. And conclusions based on bad data are, in my opinion, are better than just opinions. Again, you can choose whether or not to believe my conclusions. I've had the quality of my data and my judgment questioned, but curiously enough, no one's ever actually asked to see the data or produced any evidence of their own, so you can draw your own conclusions from that. Now, amongst the criticisms I received, my favourite ones really were, first of all, that somehow the data I used was unrepresentative. This was great because, if using comprehensive data on everyone who's ever played the game isn't, a good enough starting point for an analysis, then I don't really know what is. And certainly better than you'd normally ever have in doing any kind of analysis about anything. The other thing we've had criticism we've had is that the patterns we've observed are just transient and that they're going to change tomorrow. And the truth is this isn't the way the world works. These trends involve, thousands, millions of people. These are not the kind of trends that are just going to suddenly change. They've been very stable for some years, so I wouldn't bet on that. And again, it's even amusing that Wargaming themselves criticised the data I was using, which is quite hilarious considering it's their data I was using. So now let's go on and see what the actual numbers say. Well, the first thing is a player base is something that's very difficult to define because some people will play every day, some people will play once a week, some people might not play for months, and so it's difficult to come up with a very specific figure. And the number of games a player can play can go up, the number of games can go down, and all these will kind of affect the player base in a sense. But in the long run, the only two things that matter are the number of new recruits you're getting and how fast players are leaving the game. Again, if new recruits outweighs players leaving, that's a good thing. The player base increased. And on the other hand, if the new recruits is small and the player base is leaving is large, the game will fall. That's just very simple maths. And again, what I was saying was that recruitment was falling and the active player base was falling. That was my original claims, and I'll show you some figures now that illustrate that. First of all, if we look at the new accounts created from January to April, I'm obviously doing January to April because I want to make a year-on-year comparison. Between 2016 and 2017, we saw a 17% fall. This is actually accelerated. We've seen like a 35% fall between 2017 and 2018. So, if anything, the situation is getting worse in terms of recruitment. And in case you think possibly this is just the January to April thing is giving you a false representation, when you look at the whole year cycle, you see a fall through the year and a fall year on year. So this is a consistent and stable trend. The player base itself, measured through the Hall of Fame figures, is in freefall. The number of players who've played at least 5 or more games in the last 24 hours is now just over 40,000. And when you bear in mind that it was averaging 65,000 last summer and even through into Christmas, it's been quite a dramatic fall quite recently. This is an illustration of what I'm saying. On the left panel, you've got the figures collected by Crowley last summer, which looked pretty, they looked pretty positive. But then there'd been a significant drop by the time my figures in December, and then since March, it's just fallen off a cliff. It really has. I've never seen anything like this in the data. It's certainly not good. These are obviously green and blue lines are showing the minimum and maximum figures for a particular week. And I haven't got complete coverage of the data, but there's enough. These figures are pretty reliable. And what this, perhaps you don't trust the one-day figures. So what we've got here is we're showing that if you take the 100 battles in 28 days, we're seeing a 10% monthly reduction. Now, not annually, monthly reduction. 10 battles in 7 days is 7%, and 5 battles in 1 day is a 6%. Now, you might look at this 6% figure and say, actually, that's not too bad. The game can survive a while like that. But bear in mind, this is inflated slightly by the recent op, the Soviet op you've got going on at the moment. Maybe you think these kind of fluctuations are the kind of normal thing you'd see, and that this is going to reverse. Well, I don't want to disappoint you, but if we plot in here what the largest ever recorded monthly increase we've seen in the entire history of the game, with the exception of the launch window for the 360 and the Xbox One, you can see that no, it would take many record-breaking months to reverse just one average month at the moment. And as I said here, even if you look at the ops aren't reversing this trend at all. If you see here, this is the 28 days, 100 battles in 28 days, which is the core player base really. Even during the Soviet Dream machines, it's continued to fall, albeit at a slightly slower rate. So it's the ops are just stemming it. They're not really, and they're certainly not going to bring in new players. Okay, you've seen the facts, so now I'm letting you know that I'm about to do some speculation now. First thing is, in my opinion, can the game recover? Yeah, I think it can. I think the game can recover. I think it would require something to happen. I think it would require some kind of seismic shift in public enthusiasm for tanks in the Olympics, something like that. Or maybe, if Elvis was to start streaming WoT, it wouldn't have to be the console, even the PC version. I think that would give you the kind of boost you need. Seriously though, no, not a chance. The game may not die completely, but it's definitely headed into World of Warplanes territory now. Even if Wargaming were really trying to fix it, I think it would be difficult. But honestly, I see very little evidence they're actually really trying. So what does this mean for you? Nothing really. Just carry on playing if you want. I mean, just think very hard before buying premium time, because if you buy a year's premium time, the game might look very different before that expires. Don't start any really long grinds, and if you're thinking of starting to stream, well, you've missed the bus, really, I'm afraid. If you're holding out for things like Clan Wars, some kind of big fix to the game, it's not going to happen. Forget it. There's no way, based on these figures, that Wargaming are going to be investing any significant amount of time and effort in something that's not going to recoup their money very quickly. And you can expect the game to deteriorate. Matchmaking will deteriorate. Again, to be current, we've seen service merging. That's an illustration of what we should expect. Balance, you'll see more pay-to-win features, price rises, that kind of thing. What will signal the absolute end of days? Well, there are several signs you should watch out for, because again, you should judge Wargaming by what they do, not by what they say. What they say is just marketing. What they do is important. If you see them investing in things that have no benefits in the short term, but do have benefits in the long term, that's a good sign. If you see them investing in things which, frankly, are going to harm the game in the long term, but recoup money in the short term, that's a bad sign. So, I mean, you may not agree with what I've done here, the ordering, but I've put a kind of a rough scale in here showing, what are the good signs and what are the bad signs. So if they invest in Clan Wars, it's going to take effort and money on their part, but it's going to, it would improve the game in the long run. Same with things like fixing artillery, preventing seal clubbing. It would put a lot of people out of the game, but in the long term, it would be good for the game. On the other extreme, you've got things like 357 matchmaking, you've got pay-to-win features. And if we look at what they've actually been doing, you can see it tends to be down towards the bottom end of the list. Okay, we're not seeing any of the big positive changes in the game. And we are seeing things down towards the lower end. I mean, things like OP premiums, you're starting to get into worrying territory there. Earn-ops, again, things like new maps, new tech trees, the new earn-ops, they're kind of neutral. Earn-ops will, give people something to do in the short term, but they don't really change the game at all for the better in the long run. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd say there is really, 357 matchmaking is not a good idea. It would maybe benefit tier 10, maybe tier 9, but for the middle tiers, lower tiers, it would be a bad thing. So therefore, it could not be seen as a long-term positive thing. If you see more pay-to-win features coming in, that's a real problem. And honestly, I'd say if you see something like tier 9, tier 10 premiums being announced, honestly, in my opinion, just put your controller down, uninstall the game, walk away, get another hobby, because that would be a clear advertisement from a clear signal from Wargaming that they didn't think the game had any kind of future beyond the next 6 months. Okay, thank you. Now it really is the end this time, so you can go and get that cup of tea. Now, I don't really think I'm going to be around to make another one of these in a year's time. Well, I mean, I will be, but I don't think there'll be any discussion on this topic. So, okay, all the best, and well, yeah, enjoy what's left of the game.